don't know me, I'm your brother. I was raised here in this living ghetto. You don't know my kind in your world. Fairly soon, time will tell. You are telling me the things you're gonna do for me.
Like everybody. Everybody's gonna need a couple.
I ain't blind and I don't like what I think I see. Taking it to the streets.
And then somebody else out before I let you go.
Taking it to the streets.
My name is William Laddick. I'm interviewing Lord Randall Earl Kaiser, the fifth of five so far, but we've got many more that we want to do, Randall, and welcome back to the show.
Thank you, William. And it's Lord Randall Earl Kaiser the first, not the fifth. I don't know what, if there was four more before me or not, but I'm the only one. But we're going to discuss that just a little bit, but you start us off here with a few things.
Sure, no problem, no problem. We're, for the viewers that may be tuning in for the first time, we're basically doing an interview with Lord Randall each week to find out how his race is going. He's obviously running for Calgary mayor, and we check in every week to see how things are going, and then ask a few more questions to learn a little bit more about Randall's platform. And we want to find out a little bit more about what's going on. And it's a little bit different. We're not exactly standard media here, so we will just ask our questions and see where things go from there. So, like we do every week now, Lord Randall, how are things going as far as the signature campaign trail? And have you reached 100? And are you officially registered yet?
We've exceeded the 100. I think we're up to about 120 already or something like that. I just kept sailing along this week. We're not registered yet because the funding has to come through from the sources that I deal with on the banking side. So until that happens, we're just gonna, keep getting some autographs and keep talking to people. And I'm getting invites to some conversations with people now and getting some questions from some economist type people and stuff on what's really happening out there. It's really been an interesting time because, as everyone knows, my views are, a little bit different, to say the least. And to start with, I think William had a few concerns that I'll let you address those and then I'll answer to them. Okay.
Sure. Actually, you were kind of walking us right into that, so I think we'll just jump completely in, both feet and everything. During the week, as you always do, because you have your own channel, and this will be on your channel as well as the Tao Eternally, that's TAO Eternally channel, both on YouTube. And you share your own videos. You speak very freely and very openly, and your honest, happy-go-lucky self, because obviously I've been watching you for a long time, and I know that you have a very happy-go-lucky approach and character about yourself. But I watched a couple later in the week, probably Wednesday, Thursday, maybe even one on Friday. And I found myself a little troubled because you were talking about, some of the masks and the COVID, and you made an interesting joke, which was kind of funny, I thought, but about it seemed like you couldn't go to church, but you could always go to Walmart. And so why not put the two together? So that was a really interesting comment. But what I had challenges with was, it seemed like you were kind of, the way I was taking it, was like you were almost mocking what government was doing, enforcing the masks and doing all of that and all of the things that we were following. And I spoke to you before we started and wanted to clear things up a little bit for myself. But my concern was that, if you're running for office, do you really want to be doing anything that might be antagonizing or insulting to people? So my thought was just to ask you, are you making fun of people, or what is it when you are doing those kind of head scratching videos of where you're asking questions. What is it that you're kind of laughing at and really making fun of in those?
Well, that's great, William, and thank you very much for picking up on that, because there's no doubt there's a few things about this character that could come across as arrogant or mocking and that kind of language. I want to make it clear that I love people. I love all people. Okay, I can't handle the fact that the people, us people, have got sucked into a system, right? And I'm talking all people. Like I don't go into that divisions place and say, okay, this is where the cutoff line is. These guys know what's going on and they're the bad guys, I don't go to there. Like a lot of people will say that, and then the division starts, right? But in my mind, it's a system versus the common sense, the word of God, the consciousness that Christ did light within every human being, within all the people. Okay, so that's where the separation is to me. And will I make fun of that system? Damn right. And I mean, I love to bring that humor to people so that they may actually see it that way, rather than think that I'm trying to divide people again, which is what the government wants to do. And when I say that, I'm not talking about government officials. I'm just saying the government wants to do that. The system wants to spread us apart and tear us apart and keep us off kilter from that oneness that's within us, that human aspect, that Christed light that's within every single human being. So yes, I come across as all the characters, as our friend Ida said to me in one of my videos this week. She said, you play every role. The sarcastic dick, the the humorous guy that's having fun, the drama, you play every role. And I'm like, okay, fine. But every role that I'm playing is for the people, okay? For the people to be comfortable, to be free from a system that is continually trying to drive separation into their minds, whether that be the separation of well, I believe the government, that I have, potential to die from this disease or this thing that's going around that's killed now 2,000 people out of 4.5 million in my province. To me, those numbers just don't make enough sense to make that about the human that says that and make fun of that person, but just make fun of those numbers, because those numbers are completely ludicrous. So that's where I'll defend my, kind of haughty attitude in some of those videos this week, is that I want people to make fun of that system themselves, like I could have taken that one further. There was a little garbage truck on the one video that I had driving down the street picking up the garbage.
Yep.
And just previous to that was when they had this emergency alert come out across Alberta on our phones, right? Like emergency alert, again, they don't say anything about the numbers that are going on out there. It's just, we're in a pandemic, my God. And the first thing I thought of was, remember in the Black Plague, how the old movies where they said, bring out your dead, and there'd be, a cart going by and they'd throw the dead people onto the cart. Well, there was that little garbage truck that drove past me, and that kind of related to me. So there's one for you that's even more, sadistic, if you want to call it that, but ridiculous at the same time, to think that we have to have an emergency alert broadcast on our television because there's a bunch more people that have tested positive. People don't test for the influenza bug on any other year. This year, everybody's getting a test because of the fear that's driven in by the system, okay? And again, not blaming anybody in particular, it's just the system that's driven this fear into our minds, right? So hopefully that kind of helps things out. And again, if people see me as, some kind of an arrogant dick because I'm talking that way, well, I have nothing else to say to that. Like, I love everyone and I love you, and you have that freedom of choice to just leave the channel now. Maybe look back in 6 months when this election starts and say, well, remember when that guy was talking about that back then in, in April? I don't want to go there either, because then I look like a prophet or something like that, or a I told you so kind of a character. But I want to come across authentically from day one. And that's why my videos are up and in front of people. And if it doesn't suit your mind, if you are scared to death that you're going to die, then I'm sorry. I love you, but you're not going to die. There's very few people have died, and it's COVID related. It's not from COVID, like it's just a system that's driven fear into our minds, and that's what's going on.
Randall, you kind of answered my next question, because I was going to ask you a hypothetical. If someone came up to you and they said, "You are very offensive, young man. You made fun of you made fun of this COVID thing, and don't you know there are grandmothers dying and catching these things and all of that." But I think you kind of already answered that, so we'll move on from there. But just to give you an example, I was trying to do a calculation on my little calculator here while you were chatting about what percentage 2000 is of 4.5 million. And it was less than, 4/100ths%. So when you hear it that way, that might add another perspective to the viewer of what you're talking about. 2000 out of 4.5 million. And like you say, did you have that number of how many die in Alberta every year, just normally in a normal year?
About 25,000.
25,000. So 10 times as much, which is still, a small percentage, but so this is a fraction of a fraction, basically, very, very small. I had a bunch of things that came to mind, and we can go on different tangents, but I'm going to go with some of the words. I just, jot down a couple words, and then I'd like to go back and revisit them. But you didn't say it, but it made me think of the term bipartisan. Bipartisan usually means, you're including everyone, but at the same time, the word itself, to me, doesn't feel inclusive. It feels more like bi to me means split in two, and partisan, part, means to take apart to me when I hear that. And I know that you love more positive language. So instead of using bipartisan, is there a term that you would use that would show your inclusiveness of all people, like you were saying in your first answer?
Yeah, perfect. Just one more number that I wanted to throw in there. I looked this up this week too. When we talk about deaths versus deaths of COVID, and 25,000 approximately versus the 2,000 of COVID related, there was another number that I came to that was really positive to me, and that is that 50,000 new babies are born in my province every year. So, and we increase the population by quite a bit more than that, because there's immigration still happening around the world. But, we are evolving, we are, moving along in this creative process. And that's the word I'm going to come back to in a second here. But, so every year we have people die. I've lost my parents. Everybody's lost their loved ones in their lives, right? And I have ultimate compassion for every human being that dies, not just the COVID related human beings that are passing away. From the flu bugs in the previous years, from the, depression and the anxiety that's being caused by this thing. Nobody's looking at those numbers, and those numbers are, I would think, are probably a lot higher. So I want to move past those numbers now and get on to some good stuff. As you said, there is this bipartisan idea. Okay, so bipartisan often goes right to this idea of Republican, Democrat in the US, conservative, liberal here in Canada, bipartisan being a politician who wants to come up the middle somewhere, you know. But that's still not going to work, you know, like the liberal conservative or the conservative liberal, you know, they've got these what they call the red conservatives, for instance, or the blue liberals or whatever, you know, like they'll mix them together once in a while. It's still the same thing, you know, like we've said, and I'll say it one more time: under capitalism, man exploits man. Under communism, it's the exact opposite. So creativism is the word that I choose, and the word that I tend to go back to when I talk about where I'm coming from in this you know, I don't want to call it political realm, but this leadership role that I'm choosing, you know, as mayor of this city. It's from a creative aspect. So I was thinking this week a little bit about you know, how we talked about comfort income, and we're going to talk about it again now, and how that can be thrown into the idea on the side of socialism, right? Because people think in terms of capitalism and socialism, and as a capitalism, I earn my money, and as a socialist, we're giving money to the homeless people or to the elderly people or whatever, you know, the handicapped people and stuff. So and where does that come from? It only comes from a perspective of debt, right? So if we didn't have that illusion of debt in our minds, and we all got together and said, look, we can create all that we need, and we also create all the value that we need out of that credit, which is the ultimate truth. Okay, that is the truth. That's what we do. So if that was true, and it is in my mind, and hopefully people are starting to get that, then wouldn't we say that every human being deserves their comfort, and that every human being has the capacity then from that basic standpoint, okay, that comfortable basic standpoint, that foundation, to then be creative and do what they want in life, right? That's where I'm coming from. So it's that creative foundation of the human being that is free, okay, free from this ridiculous notion of debt slavery from birth. So with that in mind, and we have in our current civilization the ability to create credit, money, capital, whatever language you want to use on that, we have also have the ability to maintain or increase or decrease the value of that. Then let's just create it from the foundation of a comfort income for all. Give that to everybody. You know, I don't want to see anybody anything taken away from anybody. So the capitalists that are out there right now that have everything covered, who think in terms of, you know, investment and what they're going to do with their money, or, you know, how many more new things they can buy and stuff, give that to them too, so that everybody is on a level playing field. Everybody is at that foundation of comfort. And what they choose to do with it is up to them, because this is about free choice and free will. And that's where we start in this creativism aspect, okay?
I was going to ask you about that word because you mentioned creativism, and I know that, you know, when you start rolling your campaign and things start to get really serious as far as people competing against people for becoming Calgary mayor, the next one in October, you're going to be getting interviews from local media, and media love, at least the media that we've grown up with. That may change, who knows? But assuming that that doesn't change, they love to put labels on things. They love to sort of pin you into a certain thing. Would you be okay if you were asked, where do you stand, or how would you like to label yourself? Would you say, I'm a creativist? Will you be okay with that?
Sure. I mean, there's really no label to express it, but like you say, we're dealing with the English language, or we're dealing with communication in general. So there's going to be something. But from that perspective, that'll take me out of that competitive realm, which is where I'm not going to go anyway. Will I listen to people's views? Of course I will. And then I'll offer mine, but I'm not going to argue with anybody. There's no point in that. If you argue, then you're falling into that realm of division, right? And there is no division in my mind.
And so, to me, the opposite of division is inclusion. So it sounds to me like you are more inclusive of what everyone thinks. I mean, obviously you can't do everything or fulfill every opinion, but it sounds to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, or add to what I'm saying, but it sounds to me like what you're saying is everyone's thoughts, feelings, opinions are welcomed. We may not be able to take action on all of them, but everything is meant to be included and considered at the very least. Is that fair?
Fair enough, William. And, a perfect example would be, a capitalist coming to me and saying, well, I earn my money and they need to work for it, or something like that. And my response would simply be, well, what if there was no such thing as debt? Which there isn't really. And then just see where it goes from there. That's not an argument. It's just a point saying that, tell me who we're in debt to, and, let me hear your opinion of that. That kind of an approach, rather than you're wrong, like, you're right, you worked for your money, so you deserve it. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But what's taking away from the basic foundation of that other human being, that other human over there, not having his basic rights, his birthright?
Yeah. Now I want to jump in on that too, because earlier in the week there was a video I really liked that you did. You were sitting up on a hill and you were overlooking an area. I think it wasn't too far away from the Glenmore Reservoir, if I remember correctly, and it was a more affluent neighborhood. And you had some really wonderful things to say about the rich people. You're basically saying, in my leadership, if I become the mayor, if I am the mayor, you're not going to lose anything. Even though I want comfort income for all, it doesn't mean taking anything away from the things that you, the rich people, or the more affluent, have earned. Would you like to add or comment on that a little bit more as well? Just the rich people aren't bad people in your eyes either. Is that correct?
No, that's right. I mean, if they earned their money off the backs of someone else in an aggressive capitalist manner, karma deals with that. Like I'm not here to judge anybody. People will judge themselves or feel their own guilt or feel their own karma. That's up to each individual. If they, like, there's lots of young entrepreneurs out there who have made mega bucks off of multi-level marketing things, nowadays, in the last 10, 15, 20 years, maybe already, that kind of stuff has been happening internet wise and stuff. Is there something wrong with that? No. It was what it was and is what it is in our current reality. So, the people that are still functioning that way, what are you going to say? Like it just is what it is. So congratulations, is basically the way I look at it. And if you feel like you need more and more and more, I think your fears are going to disappear of having to have even more, when you realize what I'm talking about here, that there is no lack, that there's nothing to fear as far as how much you need on this planet to retire or whatever it is that you want to do. I mean, how much traveling can a person do? If you make enough, if you're thinking about making enough money to travel around the world, or, have a yacht or something like that. There's only so much that one human being can do anyway. So you're not going to be able to spend trillions of dollars because, you know, you can only throw a couple $1,000s away a day anyway, you know, like it's just never going to happen that big. So, but that's getting too extreme. Basically, like you said, there's no problem in the creationist or creativist mindset. Everybody is fine. You know, we've all created our own reality to this point. Why would you want to destroy that? Why would you want to take anything away? I don't want to see the stock market crash. I don't want to see the dollar explode. Like a lot of people talk about the stock market and stuff like that, or Bitcoin's going to go to hell once this is all done. Why? You know, why not just let everything happen the way it's happening and add to it? It's an and game, not an end game. And just bring more in. Like that's what I've always promoted from day one is allow these unlimited asset backed accounts to filter through. Allow the credit system that is, just to be honest and say that it's the human beings who are the creditors that create the bond with the government, so the government can continue, or we'll change the name to administration. I like to say that rather than government, but that administration can then administer credit created by the humans and agreement and their authority back to the human beings, the people that are struggling. There's nothing wrong with that. I've always said that, you know, like we're not here to destroy the old system and replace it with a new one. Just expand and open up, you know, shed the truth on what's truly going on, which is the bond, the credit. You know, we'll talk a little bit more later, maybe about quantitative easing and the modern monetary theory, if you like, because that's something that I was trying to discuss with some people even today. A guy came to me with a very long document written by a friend of his on economics and how he sees what's currently going on, and he's predicting, you know, things are going to pick up and stuff like that. So you know, we can do that a little bit later though, William. I know I can see you got something else on your mind, and keep me on track, my friend. Thank you. That's what
no problem. No problem at all. And you're right. I have a lot on the slate here. Matter of fact, I will add to what you're saying though, and say, I'd like to actually dedicate and commit next week to talking about that very thing, the quantitative easing versus monetary theory, plus the banking, and maybe even a little bit of history on how you became introduced to some of this stuff. I know you mentioned some of it before, but maybe we can dig into that a little bit more and all just sort of make it a real money focused type of conversation next week. I wanted to tie back something that you've mentioned already in this show. You've mentioned probably every week, but I want to explore that just a little bit further. And that was the comment that you make about capitalism versus communism. Can you tell me again, man exploits man? Is that, and then the other is the opposite?
Yep, pretty much.
So
and that was,
that's
and
like,
that was,
I'm going to interrupt. I'm sorry. That's sort of basically almost like a joke in a way. Man exploits man, and the other way around is the other way around, which means man exploits man, right?
it is
a joke out for people, you know.
Thank you. And I mean, maybe it needs it, you know, like to explain that, because, and it's a quote by a man who was an economic advisor to John F. Kennedy himself, and he was a Canadian, John Kenneth Galbraith, and he's had some other beautiful quotes too. We could come up with some more, but that one just it explains it so simply, you know, like, you know, creativism is non-exploitive, non-manipulative in nature. Both those other two things exploit man. Doesn't matter which one, they're both doing that same thing.
But the key, I think the point there is basically, and we talked about this a little bit last week too, so I don't know if we want to go too deep in this direction, but I think it's still worth mentioning. And that is that it seems like up to this point in our existence, at least as long as you and I have been alive, that we've always been offered two choices: left choice, right choice, A or B, dark, white, which do you prefer, dark meat or light meat, all that kind of stuff. But it's always a polarity. There's always one or the other. And it seems like you can go to an extreme on either side. And it doesn't seem like either side necessarily gives you a complete, fulfilling answer. And so to paraphrase you a little bit, and then I want you to speak on that and add to it and change it and correct me if I missed anything. Basically, you're stepping out of that box completely, and you're just saying, it's not about either or A or B, or black or white. It's about, again, inclusiveness. It's about a much more holistic approach where we are looking at things that involve people, involve a healthier approach, involve creativity, involve all the kinds of things that you can use to really thrive. Is that fair? Is that honest? Am I barking up the right tree?
Perfect, William. And I love that word, thrive. That's a word that you and I both can resonate with, and partly because of agreement with another friend that we have in common, Foster and Kimberly Gamble, two friends, I guess you could say. I mean, there's some things in their perspective that are a little different than what I think too, but in general, yeah, human beings are here to thrive. But to thrive, we need a foundation of comfort, and home and food and water. And if we don't have those things, then we're in that polarity, right? That polarity of have and have not, of lack versus abundance, of debt and credit, when really debt is the illusion, and debt is the ultimate deception that brings us this whole ridiculous two-sided duality mentality story, because there is no debt at that level. Am I saying that, at a very simple level, barter and trade, I'm just going to take your banana and I'm not going to give you anything back? No, that is where, there is a trade involved, right? But when you're talking about, government manifestation of money, I don't like to use the word creation when I talk about what they do, because it's all paper and it's all autographs and agreements, right? Which is paper. So manifests are also paper, right? So manifesting, the idea of manifesting to me is manifesting, we're creating something out of paper. So the manifestation of credit is only credit. There's no such thing as debt. And if you think in terms of debt, then tell me who, tell me who you're in debt to. Even if we were back to the gold standard, as I've said, or to some kind of a commodity standard of some kind, then who is the debt to? Somebody who got the gold from somebody else, who stole it maybe, or, or got it off the backs of the people that had it in the first place, exploitation and manipulation. It all comes back to that. It doesn't matter which system, the credit, authorized, authority, autograph, and agreement, that silver and gold, AUAG agreement, or the silver and gold or commodity, it still comes down to value. Once again, who puts the value on it? We do again. So, the value being, I own it. Well, where'd you get it? Like so many questions that you can ask in that old system of credit and debt. So we just take out the debt, and then we've got a polar system, right? Which is just credit, just God, just abundance.
Perfect. While you mentioned, Foster and Kimberly, I think this would be a good time for me to give them a quick plug too, because right now they're actually, they've done a new movie. They originally released a movie called Thrive back in late 2011. And it was one of the most viewed movies of its kind when they first released it. And then in September of last year, of all times, they released Thrive 2, which they didn't think they were going to do originally, but then they did. And now they were charging money for that. But right now, and this is a plug for them, and I've seen the movie and I highly endorse it, especially if, you know, you're wanting to learn more about sort of the behind the scenes of what's going on behind our governments and all of that kind of thing. But that's just one element. They're also doing that second sequel. They're offering it for free to anyone who wants to watch it. And I can even I'll put that link down in the comments as well, because I like supporting movements and things like that too. So
Yes,
from
please.
that, I will definitely move on. We were mentioning in past videos, and we'll mention it again in this video, that if any of the viewers have any specific questions they'd like to ask, we are, at least at this point, very open to taking your questions just by making comments in the comment section of the videos. And I took a look for the first time actually at our past videos to see if there were any questions that came up. There was one. It was probably made in reference to something that was said on the video, so it wasn't completely clear. But I think it kind of is in alignment with what we've been talking about today, and maybe we can make some heads or tails and give Mr. Neil Stewart some kind of an answer, because Neil basically said in the comments when we were talking about comfort income, I think it was, I see many people retire, and then after they've retired, they realize they are bored. So they get jobs just maybe again to you know, occupy their time. And he was just asking, is that the same kind of thing of what we were talking about in that video? Is there something there that you can speak to, Randall?
Yeah, for sure. And thanks, Neil. Neil's a pretty regular guy with us and makes some beautiful comments. And you know, he's very aware of the way that we're talking, as far as, you know, me and Randy, whatever, you know, like he's a brilliant man. And yeah, so when we talk about that comfort foundation, right, which goes to every human being, including the elderly. Okay, so the elderly now, a lot of them are still scrambling, you know, like the pension plans are out there, unless you're part of a government pension or some, you know, big company that you were involved in, a corporate company of some kind, beyond the corporate government, because it's a corporation too, as everyone is aware. Maybe they're not, but they should be. It's, you know, the majority of elderly people are just getting by, you know, like it's a challenge for them. However, if they had their comfort looked after, once again, how many of them would become creative? Like Neil said, you know, how many of them would want to go out and greet people at the airport with a white cowboy hat in Calgary, you know? Like it's, when I go to the airport here, I love that, because it's elderly people, like 60, 70-year-old people. God, I have a little experience this week. I went and was getting autographs, and I went into this piano store. William, I got to tell this sideline story here. And this man, pushing 80, if not in his 80s, okay, greeted me at the door. And, you know, I went through my little spiel pretty quick, and he goes, I like the sound of that, you know, like he was coming at it, feeling me, you know, like he thought that it was a pretty good idea, this comfort income for everyone. And so he autographed right away. And then he looks at me and says, but I want to play you a song. And I said, well, you listen to me. Of course I'm going to listen to you. Oh my God, William. He got on this piano thing, and it was like a computerized piano. It played every kind of music. It was like my old man had this Conn organ way back in the 70s, and he could play different kinds of music on this organ. But this piano was phenomenal. My God, this man, his fingers were just jingling. I sat there for 20 minutes and listened to him, and I thought, look at that, you know, inside of an 80-year-old man. Not only is he still capable of blasting out any kind of song he wants, but he's sitting in there, the piano salesman for this company, and probably the best salesman they could ever even imagine. So he has his comfort, and then he's out there creating. Isn't that a wonderful little example of what we're just talking about? You know, like there's so much potential for people once they're comfortable to be creative at any age. It's beautiful. So I think that probably is what Neil was talking about in his question. I had a dead spot there, so I wanted to mention, I said something about polarity a little bit earlier, and I said one God, you know, and I have a cute story on that because you brought in the idea, and we started this off with me getting blasted every now and again, potentially from someone who's saying that I'm, you know, coming across maybe as arrogant or something like that. And one time the last time I did a political run, I was in the beef cattle industry, and we were doing a speech, or I was doing a speech, and I let fly a couple swear words in this auditorium. And this lady came up, and her name was Mary. I'll still never forget her. She was an older lady, and she had red hair, Mary. And she come flying across at me, and she says, "You know, Randall, you did a very good job. You're very clear, you're succinct, everything was coming across pretty good. But do you have to use that kind of language? Satan's watching you," you know, she goes like this in my face, and she had her finger up. And I said, "Mary, I don't know if you know this, but the word Satan simply means crazy thoughts in Aramaic, which was the language that Jesus Christ spoke when he walked on this earth." Holy shit, did she ever let fly on me? It was like, you're wrong. She was just pretty darn upset.
Was she cursing?
Oh yeah, well, in her own language. With her red hair. And this guy that was doing this session with me, he heard this commotion, he comes running across the arena towards me, says, "Kaiser, what do you got yourself into now?" And I said, "I don't know." So you see the potential of people, you know, blasting me is out there. And I know that.
Yep.
Is it out there for every other politician? Probably a lot more so, because they're fighting against each other. I'm just bringing up some issues, you know, and a system of not only a system, but language and words. And in that case, it was a word that holy doodles.
Yeah, you got to watch those holy doodles in public. That's for sure. It's a great segue though, Randy, and thanks you for covering for me there, because I was looking up something here, and you finished your answer before I was able to kind of jump back in. But you're talking about something very interesting, and I kind of want to maybe end the show on this subject matter. But that's about language. What I realized, I mean, you're talking about, you know, the lady having her own language, telling you to watch your language, young man. And there's also another language which I've noticed that we haven't talked about. And that is the language, some of the language that you use. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard any political candidate use things like love in their language, for example, Christ consciousness. I mean, isn't that bordering on dangerous religious territory? I mean, you're not supposed to talk about religion, sex, or politics, but somehow you got to talk politics when you're running for mayor, I guess, but kind of confusing. But what is it that that you hope to bring through language, Randy? Because, you know, you definitely use certain terms and words that I've never seen any other candidate use before.
Yeah, probably. And I mean, I don't consider myself religious at all, you know. I consider myself spiritual. Do I use the word, you know, Jesus Christ or the Lord Jesus Christ, which is translated to logos, logic, the everlasting life, the word of God, those kind of things? Yes, that's what that means to me, right? Does it mean anything about, you know, a second coming of another Messiah? Hell no. You know, that's within you. That Christed light that comes back, that second coming is in every human being. And are there going to be religious fanatics that don't like that? You betcha. You know, I'm going to be considered a blasphemer in that case. But guess what? Who else was considered a blasphemer back in his day when he was walking around on the earth? So I'm not comparing myself, don't get me wrong, but we all have the same capacity to have that Christed light, that love, that compassion, that passion for humanity, for mankind, for Mother Earth, for our universe, for all, you know, the animals, the plants, and everything else. And that's what I bring. That's my language. So like it or lump it, it is what it is, you know.
And you both share the word Lord in different ways, but
right. And I mean, that one was not my idea. That was these kings and queens and lords and ladies and dukes and duchesses and barons and baronesses and stuff like that. They're the ones that made fun of that.
Yeah.
And the word Lord, according to one of my friends, was basically doing whatever it takes in the moment. Okay, so that's what a Lord means in that sense. And I really like that one. That was actually a guy named Greg Hallett, who I don't know where the hell he went these days, but he was at one point saying he's the true hereditary king of England rather than the Queen, which is, you know, I know that she's just part of the banking families myself because of being involved in that, but that's a whole nother story. But you know, the idea of Lord, again, you know, is it going to come across as something weird to some people? Of course it is. But is it going to be a gimmick? Is it going to be, you know, another, what did I call it the other day? This is this little character that I'm creating with the white hat and the little bowler tie and the name Lord at the beginning, because it's a name, it's not a title. That Lord Randall Earl Kaiser, it's going to be recognizable, that's for sure. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. I mean, is what it is.
Now we say lords for the men. What was the term that they would use for women?
Lady in that case.
It was lady. Okay. Yeah. So instead of saying maybe, you know, men and women or ladies and gentlemen, you would say lords and ladies, you know, to introduce your next speech or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. I've never watched this movie. I don't like to quote movies too often, but last night, for whatever reason, I got into Pride and Prejudice and I watched that movie. Have you ever seen it, William?
I think I have, actually, but it was a while back now.
That was a cute little movie, you know, and it talked of a place of communication. You know, it talked of this hierarchy, but yet from a hierarchical standpoint, this one character, he still showed a lot of heart and a lot of compassion. It was really a nice little show. But, you know, that's like to end this off a little bit with that hierarchy thing, you know, because we're talking about lords and ladies. That's another thing that just wants us to be separated, you know, and gets us into that idea of separation, where I want everybody, every man out there to be a lord, and I want every lady out there to be a lady. That's the kind of language that I like, you know. It just resonates with me to think in terms of lords and ladies, that we are elevated together. You know, we've all brought ourselves to the same place, or to that same central spot of evolution, you know, out of fighting with each other, to be all being lords and ladies, or ladies and gentlemen, if you want to use that word instead of lords. But I don't see any problem with Lord. If you're acting in consciousness in the moment of what needs to be done, and that's what a Lord is, then we all need to be doing that, you know, as males and females.
Randy, I think we'll leave it there today, but I would like to visit one more thing along those lines, perhaps in the very near future, and that is your love for alchemy, and bringing, you know, we're talking about using words in alchemy, and just I've seen some of your videos in the past, and you had used a lot of alchemy in, you know, in some of the descriptions of some of the words you were using. And I don't know if I've heard too much from you in that department lately, but it would be kind of fun to visit that given the opportunity.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. And, you know, alchemy versus magic is what I like to look at, because magic has got to do with a lot of deception, right? But again, alchemy is bringing the element of love. Okay, so, you know, we're going to end all of these things with that loving atmosphere, because that's what we're here for. And it's a, you know, it could seem to people that we're all over the place at times, and there's potential for separation in the minds of the audience, AU, that's watching, the golden audience, AU. There's a little alchemy for you. And, you know, but in reality, we're always going to bring it down. And please listen to the last few minutes of each of our videos with us, because we're going to end it pretty soon here. And that's what's so important to us, is us setting our subconscious, resetting if need be, but setting our subconscious, our inner higher selves to that same place every time. And if it takes a few words of repetition, then use them and choose whatever words you want, but we'll share in a second or two here.
Yes, exactly right. And that's my cue for sure. We're going to change things up a little bit as far as how we wrap up the show after we do our little bit. We are going to share a different musical piece than what we've been normally playing. It's an acoustic version from Johnny Cash that a lot of people will recognize, especially in the Calgary area. And it's a young gentleman, Calvin Pryor, is playing the tune, and he'll be wrapping up the show with I Walk the Line. But for me, that pretty much wraps it up for me. Randall, could you please give us our final blessing to wrap up the interview?
Awesome, brother. With peace, harmony, love, abundance, and freedom for everyone and everything every day on our minds. Abundance, sovereignty, health, love, and euphoria. And if you didn't get that, peace, harmony, love, abundance, and freedom, PHALF, flaff. Have a flaff. I love you guys. Love you, William. Thank you so much. See you later. Next week, we'll talk money.
I keep a close watch on this heart of mine. I keep my eyes wide open all the time. I keep the ends out for the tie that binds, because you're mine.